So on this episode, we're going to be talking about engineering crowdfunding success and beyond. It's a great episode you don't want to miss, so do stay tuned. So welcome to the 2x eCommerce podcast show. I'm your host, Kunle. Now, the episode you're about to listen to is an interview I had with Mike Raven. Now, Michael Raven is the founder and CEO of Blazon Agency. They're a UK-based agency that focus exclusively on crowdfunding, on launching crowdfunding campaigns. And on this episode, we talk about the life cycle of a crowdfunding campaign from a marketing standpoint to launch and beyond. So when we talk about that, we talk about the pre-launch, which tends to be 6 to 8 weeks before the campaign goes live, what happens on the campaign date going live, and how to run your Shopify store beyond the post-launch date, whereby you're still collecting pre-orders in your Shopify store. So we talk about, we go full Monty here. He has incredible experience. He's raised tens of millions of if not hundreds of millions of pounds or dollars for crowdfunding campaigns through his agency. You could check their website out, blazonagency.com. He specifically said he doesn't really want to talk about his clients, but they're on his website. Whether it's for corporates, trying to do R&D, or for fresh D2C businesses, he knows the deal. He pretty much is on top of his game there. Now, they're very European focused, just to take note of that. They're unashamedly European focused, so whether you're in UK or the rest of Europe, Blazon Agency actually just covers that geo quite specifically for launching and testing new product launches through crowdfunding campaigns. So that really is the episode. Remember that this is the podcast. I just want to reiterate, because I didn't really put an intro for this episode. This is the podcast where you learn strategies that would help you sell more. That's my promise. So if you're looking to grow, metrics, such as average order value, traffic, your audience size, and ultimately conversions, this is the podcast to listen to. Essentially, where 2x e-commerce, and we're all about, growing metrics, specific metrics within your e-commerce business. I just found this particular episode really, really, really interesting. I like his methodology, from clicks to conversions through the pre. Well, you listen to it. It's a brilliant episode. I don't want to say too much. So stay tuned and enjoy this episode. Before I let you go, though, if you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcasting platform, be it Spotify, be it iTunes, be it Google Podcasts, or whatever podcast you tend to listen to show on. Just enjoy. If you're on iTunes, leave us a review. Whatever country you're at. Definitely leave us a review. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We love subscriptions. There's some visual elements to this podcast which you can only enjoy on the YouTube channel. So I encourage you to just hit the subscribe button, and it doesn't really cost you much. So if you're enjoying the audio, join us on YouTube. Every now and then you will catch some conversations up on the YouTube channel. So that's it for now. Just a shout out to our sponsors, Klaviyo, number one for email marketing in the e-commerce space. Rewind, number one for backup solutions on Shopify or BigCommerce. Famous, arguably number one for creating just the most engaging mobile experiences for product launches. And ShipBob, world-class 3PL solution. That's it for me. Enjoy this conversation. If you really want to get the method to effectively launching a crowdfunding campaign from a marketing standpoint. For me, I'll just say bye for now, and I shall catch you on the other side. So welcome to the show, Michael. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Kunle. Thank you for having me. My name is Michael Raven. I'm the founder and managing director of Blazon Agency. So our tagline is the brand launch agency, and that's because we are a full stack digital agency focusing on the very early launch phase of products. So our predominant focus is consumer products, consumer technology, and with the nature of that agency focus, we're also Europe's leading end-to-end crowdfunding agency. So an agency that covers the whole end-to-end flow of a crowdfunding campaign. We are experts with Indiegogo and Kickstarter, registered experts, as well as Crowdcube and Seeders and Shopify. And then some of our other really interesting focuses are on direct to consumer, sustainability, and yeah, really interesting topics like that.
Just full circle, pre-launch or pre-campaign, launching a product to market, and then you also have experience with Shopify.
Exactly, taking that whole kind of first couple of years, essentially that a product has, really from the ideation phase, from the real inception phase, all the way through the crowdfunding phase, which we think is a very, very important kind of element these days for consumer products, all the way through to the post-campaign phase, which is the little bit between going to Shopify or going to any e-commerce, and then obviously the phase where we hand the client off to other agencies, which is generally the phase where they go to retail, go to Amazon, and really do that large-scale scale-up, which is something that we, again, are not experts in, and so we kind of hand it off to a much better expert after that kind of 1 or 2 year cycle that we have.
This double-barrel question I have. First is, what products are right for crowdfunding? And the second is, are you seeing trends where existing D2C businesses are tapping into crowdfunding for just insights for testing essentially, their products and, taking it to market, to fresh markets rather than their existing, customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So when, I address the first question around which kind of products are correct for crowdfunding, I think it's a really interesting one. And it's something that we get quite a lot, obviously, as an agency that has a kind of quite big exposure. We do collect a lot of leads from a lot of people who are really wanting to go on crowdfunding or wanting to go down the D2C route, or of course these days with the whole pandemic, they just want to actually launch a new company. They want to launch a startup, and they want to do it in the consumer product, consumer technology, FMCG space. And yeah, there's not every campaign that we can say, oh yeah, crowdfunding is going to be great for you. You're going to raise $1 million on Kickstarter, and it's all going to be amazing. There are certain criteria for crowdfunding that work better than others. And so what we always try and say, and this is our kind of focus as an agency as well, is that we always want products that are a world first. So they have a world first element to them, whether it's in their materials, in their approach, in their features, in the overall product, in the overall market, and just something that is unique and something that has not been done before. Because essentially, if you have a product that you can buy on Amazon, that you can buy in a store, that you can buy in retail, that's not really going to be applicable to an audience of Kickstarter, Indiegogo buyers and consumers that mainly focus around early stage products, that focus on products that are really cool, really unique, that they can't buy anywhere else, because that's what that kind of audience likes. So with those kind of products in mind, we have some examples of products that have brand new fibers, like sneakers made out of new renewable materials. This kind of sustainability angle is something that is really unique. Or again, products that just have a completely brand new approach in gaming or consumer electronics or consumer technology. So that's kind of where we kind of differentiate between, is a product right for crowdfunding, or should you just take it directly to the D2C route? And of course, then you have the further products which are just white labels, kind of resell stuff, which is again never really going to work on crowdfunding because people just can buy it direct from Amazon, so they don't really need to go down that route. So I think when taking that into mind, there are obviously products that stand out where we see early stage, and products that just completely we just don't touch, that should just really launch on Shopify or launch on Amazon, or again, many of these products already have competitors that already do tens of millions in sales every year, and so getting a foothold on any kind of audience is going to be a hard one. But yeah, so into the next question around the sorry, what was the next question actually?
It's around D2C businesses, e-commerce, established businesses in general, tapping into crowdfunding. Whether you're seeing more of that in the space, just to launch or pre-launch products, are they using crowdfunding?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to these types of companies that have a bit more traction in the market, we are seeing a lot of companies that maybe haven't gone down crowdfunding on the first iteration of their product or their first product line, but then they're looking at crowdfunding for their second launch, because maybe they've done a first e-commerce launch, and maybe they've done it within a geographical area, like they've launched in the UK quite successfully, but they want to scale globally, and to scale globally, scale to the US, to scale through Europe and Asia is, it's going to take quite a big approach when it comes to just traditional e-commerce, especially if you're not on the global FBA Amazon or any of these other channels. So crowdfunding is a great route to directly market your product to a global audience, whether it's a fresh product or whether it's a pre-existing brand. So when you take that into consideration, crowdfunding does become a really attractive offering. And of course, we do see a lot of companies that have done quite well in their traditional e-commerce approaches, but then they've managed to really 5 or 10x their kind of sales within the first couple of months by using crowdfunding. So that we are seeing more companies come around to the idea of crowdfunding as a route to market, not just for early stage products, but also for more existing products. So another interesting example of this could be the idea of equity crowdfunding. So a lot of D2C brands, especially in the FMCG space, especially in the UK, are looking at Crowdcube and Seedrs as their avenue to raise equity and retain equity within their crowd. And so getting passionate users of their products to actually invest and to actually hold a piece of the company. We're seeing this a lot in the sustainability angles, on the kind of vegan food angles, and just fresh, new, interesting products. So there's always that line between products that are right for Kickstarter and Indiegogo, the reward-based crowdfunding, and products that are right for equity crowdfunding. And so equity and stuff is more around the fast-moving consumer goods, around the kind of food and drink angles, whereas Kickstarter and Indiegogo are more suited towards consumer products, consumer electronics, kind of single items, rather than a kind of more varied kind of catalog of products. But yeah, another really interesting angle, and this is interesting for us as well as an agency, something that we've been experimenting with over the past 4 years, is bringing in much more established brands, so SME all the way up to actually corporate brands, to actually run their R&D innovations through the crowdfunding model. And so that has been a really, really fruitful exercise for a lot of corporates. Again, in my mind, this is a very early stage part of the process for corporates, but it's something that we're very passionate about as an agency, and we've been really pushing as a really, really great output. So when we talk about corporates, as an essence, they have these R&D departments, these innovation departments that they're spending, tens of millions on per year. These are big corporates around the world. And the traditional route would be obviously to do some user testing, with a very, very small group of people, maybe some expanded testing by going into localized stores, localized retail, localized supermarkets, whatever it may be. Again, geographically constrained to a single country. And there are obviously more interesting ways to do this online nowadays. So setting up this kind of model and integrating it into the crowdfunding model is kind of like almost like a marriage made in heaven. It's like a perfect match, because you can run what we call the pre-campaign phase, where we kind of collect leads, where we collect different types of data and different type of customers by running pre-campaign advertising on Instagram and Facebook with different types of content, different imagery, different video clips, and different landing pages that we can A/B test to collect leads, to collect and build an audience, to build a customer base before the campaign even launches. And in essence, that's pretty much a dream for any corporate innovation and kind of corporate R&D department, to actually have the ability to run different iterations of products, different imagery, different features to different types of customers, all in one umbrella, and then launch on crowdfunding, which essentially just validates your product. So that kind of validation side for corporates is invaluable, and that's something we've seen a lot more of, and it's vamping up, because corporates are understanding that they can spend a few $100,000 to validate a product, rather than spending tens of millions to roll out a product that at the end of 2 years they understand is not right for the market. People are not interested in this type of approach, and obviously they've not wasted, but they definitely learned an expensive lesson versus crowdfunding, which could have taught them a very, very cheap lesson.
There's this brand unconscious, bias where when, certain group of consumers see, a well-known brand, on a product, they think or feel its quality. So when brands, run this test, do the R&D through crowdfunding, are they discreet with the brands on there, or do they, slap on their brand to just for recognition, for instance recognition? What is the typical approach?
Yeah, I think there's definitely.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. Klaviyo is a growth marketing platform that powers over 25,000 online businesses. Klaviyo understands every single customer interaction and empowers brands to create more personalized marketing moments. Listen, analyze, and act on your customer data with Klaviyo. Visit klaviyo.com/2x.
Two angles to this, and I think there's, these kind of thoughts are definitely running through the minds of the R&D and innovation and PR and trust and safety, etc., departments of all these corporates. It's like, do we go down the route of hiding our product under the guise of another name, which is absolutely done time and time again. You even see this in the D2C Shopify world, where companies will build out a huge campaign under the guise of another product name, but if you look very, very carefully into the underlying company, there is a corporate there that is testing. It's the same with crowdfunding. There's a lot of products that will have completely different name, look like a startup, because if you build something that looks like a startup, you can really, really test the audience. You don't have the the backup, the experience, and obviously the tag of a corporate there that's going to maybe draw people in. You have just a product that's completely not white label, but of course it's like it's labeled under something completely different that can again maybe even be more applicable to an audience. And so a corporate could then run out a sustainable brand that focuses on sustainability and not have the corporate name to it, which is again something that we've done as an agency, and we've seen time and time again being done, and it's a really interesting one. So there are those trust elements of having a big brand on the campaign, but there are also positives to just hiding it under something completely different, and I think that's a really interesting approach, and I think corporates are doing this a lot more than people realize essentially.
So circling back to your first to the first question you answered, which was around the right products for crowdfunding. From your answer, I just picked up the fact that every product that should launch on a crowdfunding platform such as Indiegogo and Kickstarter must have a sliver of innovation. What I found very interesting with what you said, which I didn't even realize, was the equity-based crowdfunding platforms, which are exclusive to the UK and Europe. Cedar and I think Crowdcube you mentioned,
exactly,
are very biased towards CPG products. I didn't even know that, so thanks for pointing that out. My question has to do with the right steps. So let's say now we created a product which we know is innovative and it's in a certain respect, whether it's functionally innovative or materially innovative from a sustainable angle. It's different. It's unique in the marketplace, and it should own a space in its niche. When do you start thinking about marketing? When should founders start speaking to agencies or people as yourselves in order to just stack the potential of success in their favor? What's the play? What are the steps, the accurate steps or logical steps towards actually getting marketing right once innovation has been secured in a product?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not always that innovation has been secured as well. There are products that come to us at a very early stage, but we just think that it's not right for crowdfunding or just not right for anything. I mean, there are innovations out there which just don't make any sense and probably don't have a market. But yeah, I would say always as early as possible. Even 1 year before. We have companies coming to us and saying, we're developing a product. We have a product development kind of arm. We're going to do something interesting. We're going to build a prototype. When we get down to the actual fundraising side, can you help us? And so that's great, because we can keep checking in every couple of months and understand, where's the product at, and maybe even give a little bit of advice and a little bit of a direction there. But again, it's not really our speciality. So where we really sit comfortably within the product lifecycle of the launch is about 8 weeks before launch. We get involved. We can spend the time in the pre-campaign phase. This 8 weeks is always called the pre-campaign phase, actually building out a landing page, building out an advertising strategy, building out great content, taking what they have, or even giving them the actual video and photo assets themselves to get it done within our network, building out a really great campaign that's going to start testing. So again, A/B testing a bunch of landing pages to understand which approach is best, which headline, which features come up first. Is the video really strong? Is the imagery strong? Which types of imagery are going to relate best and affiliate best with our audience? And then with the advertising side, we build out a lot of different ad testing across Facebook and Instagram, using a lot of different audiences. We start by testing a wider range, a kind of top of funnel range, and then we kind of narrow it down to say, okay, this type of audience is definitely reacting better than this type, because we can see it in the data. We can see that a cost per lead on page is coming down in this type of audience, and so this might be our target for the campaign. And if we see that happening across the board with different audiences, then we built out our audiences. We know exactly what type of consumer is going to end up buying the product when it goes to crowdfunding. So that's where the really interesting data and the really kind of great insights come in, the pre-campaign phase. And building more and more towards the actual launch, we focus more around building out numbers. Does the campaign need 10,000 leads to launch, because we want to have a successful launch that has a goal of $100,000 in the actual campaign goal versus the actual external goal. So the internal goal is always something that a brand wants to raise, so maybe they want to raise $1 million, but the external goal that they'll put on Kickstarter or Indiegogo is just 100,000 or even 20,000 or 10,000, just to get that initial audience in. And so we want all those leads to convert in the first few days. And so we run email marketing to really build a connection to the subscriber base, to really understand, if we are putting out newsletters that have different feature types, again, different types of information leaks, maybe the pricing, the launch dates, and maybe even questionnaires and different elements to get people as involved in the product as possible. Because we want people to feel, because they're going on crowdfunding, because they're pledging and putting their money towards a product that is not even going to be released for the next 6 months, they have to have a certain passion, and to get them into the product lifecycle, to get them feeling like they're part of it, to get them to say, they've joined this product at the very pre-campaign phase. They've got these newsletters, they've had the chance to get involved. When the campaign launches, that's when we convert all of these leads and then use retargeting to actually retarget the audiences that we built on the Facebook advertising and the Instagram advertising. And when the campaign launches, then the product lifecycle gets even more interesting, because that's where we can go for direct advertising, the retargeting advertising. We can push out new types of content. We can release updates on Kickstarter which have much more connection to the actual community. They can have a comment section on Kickstarter or Indiegogo that allows them to actually ask questions directly to the founders, where they can answer and they can actually suggest features. And there are other great things in crowdfunding, like stretch goals, where essentially you say, okay, we're going to launch a new line of colors, maybe 4 new colors for this product, if we get to $100,000. If we get to $200,000, we're going to release a carry bag for X, Y, and Z product. So it's all these little features of crowdfunding that make it so much more interactive, so much more of a community feel, and it's just so much more beneficial for the early stage of a product, not just for sales, not just for community, but also for really building out that kind of insights that you can then take and have a much stronger product to scale when you go to the D2C, Shopify, and then of course next level to the retail and Amazon side. You've already got a product that has been built by a community, that has a pre-existing community, and that you're proven to have a demand.
Super interesting. There's a lot to flesh out here. I have a series of questions. Let's get into the pre-campaign landing page. You alluded to the fact that you set up variations of the landing page to understand which converts better, and what features actually resonate better with customers, and those can actually be transplanted essentially to the Kickstarter or Indiegogo landing page, because they've proven to work pre-sale, right? So what kind of conversion rates on the landing page for email collection would you typically see to be a sign of success?
Yeah, I think this is definitely down to the actual targeting as well. If we use perfect targeting on Facebook and Instagram at a much earlier stage, then the algorithm has a chance.
What is perfect targeting?
Well, I think it's just allowing the algorithm to actually decide for you. So essentially, no human is going to be as intelligent as Facebook's targeting algorithm. That's just a fact. So we can put a top of funnel. We can understand from the brand and from our own expertise what type of audiences we should be targeting. I mean, it's sometimes fairly obvious if we have a product that is focused around consumer technology, then of course we can focus on a consumer tech audience and do lookalike audiences with similar products. It becomes a bit harder when it's a bit more of a broad product that has a bit more of a broad kind of audience. But generally, we always like to say, within the first few weeks, we have enough data that Facebook has learned what type of audience is reacting, and they can actually use its own targeting to target that audience. And then through that exercise, we understand also which landing pages worked. So, we build out 2 or 3 iterations of the landing page, and we understand which one is the winner, A, B, or C. And from that, we get a much higher conversion rate. And so when campaigns are really going well, we can see a conversion rate of up to 50% on page, which is amazing. Because again, we use tried and tested methods. We use different placements of collection boxes. We use very, very simplistic landing pages that just, have the features list, have the great imagery, and obviously then have those collection boxes. And so it's very simple for people to just get involved. There's also lead generation campaigns on Facebook and Instagram where you obviously click on the ad and you just put your details directly in. And nowadays on Instagram and Facebook, there's an autofill button, so you can just put it in immediately. But we feel like that is not as engaging as a landing page. So we feel the more traditional landing page approach actually has a much better conversion rate in terms of converting to a sale than these new forms of lead campaign where you can autofill. I think they're better for for ticketing and other types of things that are a bit more passive. But when you're talking about a product that you're going to potentially invest a few $100s in, or maybe a bit less, then of course you want to feel like you're giving them enough information at the early stage to actually get them to put their details in. Okay. And so that's kind of where that flow comes through. So
this is 6 to 8 weeks out. So over that period towards actually launching the campaign, let's say I've signed up to a landing page in my email. How many emails would I expect to hear from the brand? And what kind of messages would the brand send to me by email now that they have a one-to-one just access to me, just pending warming me up essentially for the big campaign launch date?
Yeah, absolutely. It starts off around 1 a week, and then it kind of drives up a little bit towards the launch. Obviously, when it comes to launch, we do about 3 in the week, and then we do like a few on launch day. Kind of really kind of pushing that launch period, because of course it's exciting and we want people to feel like they're part of something. So we'll embed a calendar invite. We'll do different things like put kind of clock emojis on the actual email kind of subject header and stuff, just to kind of get people involved and get people to understand that there's a sense of urgency there. I mean, these are again more traditional e-commerce type approaches, and we just apply those to the crowdfunding kind of model, which is again something that is embedded within our strategy.
So a lot of crowdfunding campaigns feature the founder, as the subject on the video, and the main video. The founder is always kind of like introducing what the brand is all about. So with the emails, do these emails come from the brand or from the founder? Just getting into sorts of detail.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really depends. Sometimes we like to focus on the founders during the campaign. I think that's always a really, really positive approach, because essentially when you're talking about early stage products, I feel like people still in their essence of psychology like to invest in people more than in brands. And so if it's an early stage brand that no one knows about, if it's just a random name with a random logo, you're probably going to be more likely to try and affiliate with the actual founder and the entrepreneurs themselves and say, I want to support this person or this group of people or this company, rather than I want to support X, Y, and Z brand that they've never heard of, because essentially the name is almost irrelevant at that point. It's more around, I want to invest in these people that have built a really cool product. I believe in them. I want to be part of it. And also, if you're seeing an email that is, titled from the founder, which we do sometimes, absolutely. And of course, you see them in the video, you see them in the campaign, you see the team photos, you're going to be much more comfortable putting your money and putting your pledge down towards those campaigns. And if you're also then asking questions on the comment section, maybe even asking questions on the email and getting a response directly from the founder, you're going to feel a lot more part of the actual process. And that's where, again, crowdfunding is quite unique and a bit more open and a bit more connected than traditional e-commerce, which sometimes you just see a Shopify store with a random brand name, a random Instagram ad, and it's surprising sometimes how people make any sales from those things, because they are competing. They're just a random fashion brand, maybe competing with a million other fashion brands. They don't have any team section, they don't have any connection, so you don't feel emotionally connected to that brand on Instagram or Facebook or Shopify. But on crowdfunding, you kind of do feel more connected. And I think that is some part of the reason why crowdfunding is still the best route for pre-launching, essentially, for consumer products and for consumer electronics.
So we've talked a lot about performance, driving performance, just driving traffic via performance marketing through to landing pages. I've recalled in the past, from previous guests and just first-hand experience about the power of PR. So in 2021 and moving forward, how important is PR as a channel, and are there any other channels founders should tap into or marketing teams should tap into pre-campaign, at the pre-campaign phase?
Yeah, absolutely. There's absolutely still a huge focus on PR. Now, PR has changed the game a little bit, especially when it comes to crowdfunding. The crowdfunding is not all kind of positive. I'm sure, as you've heard, and as a lot of listeners have probably also heard, there are horror stories. There are stories where there's been a rug pull, essentially, that we would probably call it, where a campaign has launched, raised $1 million, and then just disappeared into the ether. Yeah. There's been a few examples. There's a smart motorbike helmet from the US where the founder literally...
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. Did you know that cloud-hosted e-commerce platforms like Shopify and BigCommerce do not provide automatic backups? Rewind steps in to protect Shopify and BigCommerce stores with automatic backups. Rewind is trusted by over 25,000 stores. Install Rewind and get to test it for free over 7 days. And to extend the 7-day trial to 30 days, head over to rewind.io, their website, and mention 2x e-commerce.
Just disappeared, and then someone found his mansion in Tennessee or something on Google Maps, and they were like, look, this guy's just bought like a house with our money, essentially, and they just run off and not delivered a product. And so there are those negative elements, which again has made some large publications a bit more hesitant to actually cover campaigns, because they don't want to get dragged into a story saying, X, Y, and Z publication published this big article interviewing a founder and pushing this product, and then 1 year down the line it's been a scam, essentially. So they're a bit more wary, and a lot of publications say we're not going to cover the campaign in its campaign phase. We'll wait for it to go to commerce, and so that we'll push it there. Now, there are a lot of other elements which are a bit underhanded within PR these days. There are a lot of publications that are requiring payment. There are a lot of publications that are pushing their social channels, their newsletter channels, and all these other things as an angle for essentially founders to kind of get in. And so it's a more evolved scene than it was back in the day. With Blazon Agency, we actually did start as a PR agency. So our first iteration of the agency was pure PR. It was public relations. It was hustling and getting articles for startups and for products. And that's where we learned more about crowdfunding and got into that game. But now it is definitely changing, and some of the bigger publications that have wider reach, and obviously those publications that focus on consumer products, maybe product design, that have that kind of nice shiny kind of feel to them, that have that audience that affiliates with the kind of products that go on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, they are now asking for payments these days, which in some ways is bad, but in other ways it actually works in favor, because now we can guarantee coverage for some products. And so in the one instance it's negative, and in the one instance it's positive. So you can look at it both ways, but the game has definitely changed with PR. It's still highly relevant, but it has changed, and there is a pay-to-play model for a lot of these publications, especially the ones that encompass their Instagram following, encompass their newsletter following, encompass different elements of their offering. And they're essentially saying, look, you can pay X, Y, Z for each lead, for each advertising click, but you could also, reach a huge audience with us and just pay this one price. And so it's positive and negative depending on the way you look at it. In terms of other ways to promote products, we've always seen a huge positivity within platforms like Reddit, where you can again have a community that's waiting and ready to look at products. If you put it in the right way, if you put it in an honest and upfront way, that you're there with a new product that you developed as a founder, again, not as just a brand, then you can get great results. You can get amazing results. We've seen products that have had tens of thousands of backers from one Reddit post that we created. We've also seen products that have had hundreds of thousands of dollars of backers from one article that we bought. And we've also seen campaigns that have raised we've actively made campaigns that have raised millions of dollars with no ad spend. And just these hustle techniques.
Are these from fresh Reddit accounts? Because Reddit users are quite savvy with.
They are indeed.
Yeah,
normally we push. Normally we push the founder's account. Again, we don't like to hide under the guise of these type of underhand tactics. We like to be much more upfront. And again, we go back to your question around, should the founders be front and center of these kind of campaigns? And it's like, yes, they definitely should, because they're the ones that are going to be pushing the products, and they're the ones that if they do a Reddit post saying, "Hi, I'm John from product A. I have this cool new product. What do you guys think?" That's going to be much more accepted into Reddit than the brand name or a fresh account saying, "Buy this product." So yeah, it's the same with Product Hunt as well. Product Hunt is a huge platform that has great reach and great results, and we like to, either I will post it on my personal account, which has quite a lot of traffic, or we'll get the founder to actually push it on their end, and so that becomes a lot more, again, down the community kind of feel.
I caught you short when you said you've had campaigns that generated millions off the back of no paid campaign. Apologies for cutting you short, but could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's been instances of campaigns where we've actually launched with no advertising, with no approach, and we've actually managed to make it happen. Again, us as an agency, we get paid sometimes on performance, and so we put a lot into campaigns. And if we see a great product that doesn't necessarily have the advertising budget for whichever reason, we'll put in our own effort and we'll make it happen. And sometimes that really does work, because if we know that we're getting a certain percentage, then of course we can afford to push on these angles ourselves and actually kind of pay to play on a few of these different elements. And so there are these really interesting angles there. And of course, throughout our campaign history, we've had a lot of interesting campaigns. We've had a lot of success. We've had a lot of really unique ones where it has been the traction has just been 10 or even more times than what we expected. And again, this is the really positive, unique side of crowdfunding. It's like, it can be unpredictable, that the audiences are there. If you have a product that is applicable to a wider audience, Kickstarter and Indiegogo can provide that boost, can provide that snowball effect to really push these types of campaigns. And so it's not out of the question to see a campaign, achieving much more than it would traditionally on maybe another channel. And of course, the price to do that is a lot less.
Yeah, and I think the major thing about just crowdfunding is the reach, the international reach.
Yes, exactly.
The world is at your doorstep, and from a fulfillment standpoint, you have the time to deliberately fulfill the orders. You do. But one of the downsides of having that huge geographical reach is that when you look down, as you said, like the CPG products or the FMCG products, they're not as applicable to crowdfunding in its reward sense, in its Kickstarter Indiegogo sense, because if you're launching a food product, a drink product, a consumer, even sometimes just a traditional kind of FMCG product on Kickstarter Indiegogo, it's hard to be able to ship worldwide with all the regulations and all the kind of certification needed. So it's easier to launch those kind of products more locally, like using Crowdcube and Seeders in the UK and in Europe, and obviously in the US you can use things like WeFunder and Republic and these other equity crowdfunding platforms to actually launch those kind of products. But what I'm really interested to see is if there's going to be a crowdfunding platform for FMCG and CPG products coming out and saying we'll just do a pre-order campaign rather than an equity campaign, because I think that is something that is missing from the US and from the UK and Europe as well. I think that's something that will come around at some point soon. With the whole rise of D2C products, especially in the US, it's something that's missing. And I think for us, it's always interesting as well. It's like we are always championing direct-to-consumer in Europe. There's kind of more traditional Californian direct-to-consumer products, with like nice flashy landing pages with this kind of like very natural feel, and these really cool products, like whatever they may be, like alcoholic seltzer or whatever. We're trying to push those kind of angles
in the UK and in Europe, and it's a massive wave that is just starting. So, these kind of products are something that we're focusing on, and I think it's a really interesting one. And there's not many agencies, not many platforms, and not many people who are riding this wave yet. And I think it's a massively untapped market. And so I think that would be one of my recommendations for people to go out and launch if they had an idea to really push this direct to consumer market, because there are people out there who want to consume products in this way. They want to be advertised, a box of seltzer products, and they want to buy them, and they don't mind paying a lot more than they would at retail. So it's a massively open market, especially with the pandemic and everyone being at home and work from home changing and different angles of commerce coming out to play. I think there's a massively untapped market there for sure.
Absolutely. La Croix, I think.
Exactly.
It's like, or Hint Water. The UK iterations now, but they were very slow to the market. Those have established themselves in the States for like 5 years, and then all of a sudden Dash is here and a few other brands here. And they're good products. They're really, really good products, and they help you lose weight if you're into fizzy drinks. Okay. Well, this is an incredible conversation, Michael. I could go on and on and on, but we have to swiftly move into the actual launch, the launch. I really want to sort of get into the mechanics of the launch. So I've heard, or I've actually witnessed, brands who have made it to page 1 of Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and that was massively game changing. Do you have any suggestions or tips on how to effectively transition from this pre-campaign phase to a position in which the editorial staff or the algorithms in Kickstarter and Indiegogo actually shift your brand to page 1?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are definitely a number of things that you can do to boost your chances. So essentially, as you said, Kickstarter is all based on the algorithm. There is very little outside input there, especially from the Kickstarter teams. There's one thing that you can get which is going to change your whole campaign drastically, which is called Projects That We Love. This is a tag that's on Kickstarter. You'll see it on the homepage, and it's basically a product that Kickstarter says, we like this kind of product. Again, in Kickstarter's essence, because it is a platform that has a certain preferential treatment towards, I would say, more arty products, and nowadays more sustainable products, less excited around consumer tech, more excited around really world first, cool, sustainable products. These kind of products will get a much higher chance of hitting Projects We Love. And if you hit Projects We Love as a tag, you'll be featured on the homepage. You might get featured in the newsletter, which is, again, a standalone newsletter for Projects That We Love campaigns. So that's one angle. But really, the only thing that really matters other than that is just getting traction, getting snowball effect, because the algorithm will kick in and say, this campaign has had thousands of hits. It's got thousands of people visiting every hour. It has great PR. It has great inbound backlinks. It has traction. It has backers. It has backer numbers. It has updates. It has comments. It has a community. Like, people like this, and so when the Kickstarter algorithm sees that, it obviously is going to recommend that to other people. And so the Kickstarter algorithm works in the sense that it's always unique to the actual person that's logged in, and of course they will see products similar to the things that they've interacted with and bought in the past. And so if you're a sustainable product, you want to get that snowball effect in the first couple of days, and then you'll get featured on the homepage of the kind of audience that you're looking for. And again, having that boost from Kickstarter is just invaluable. And of course, to get that, you just need to be really, really strong in the first couple of days, which is, again, why the pre-campaign phase, the email building phase, the community building phase, the landing page phase, the advertising phase is so important. Because if you don't have that traction in the first couple of days, it's an uphill struggle to just survive, and you're going to be lost in the ether of the rest of the campaigns. And it's like there is a massive upside to crowdfunding versus just Shopify, because you have that audience. But if you don't perform and you don't get the traction, then you're not going to hit that audience. You're not going to get that kind of visibility. And it's a bit different with Indiegogo, because Indiegogo actually does have a say on what the algorithm can do. It does allow you to get your product featured on the homepage. Indiegogo will interact with you and say, we will feature your product on the homepage. It will say, we'll feature it in a newsletter. We'll do this and that, and we'll have traction pre-built for you. And so that's where the difference is. And with Indiegogo, it's about having the right connections, it's about having the right kind of product. And Indiegogo are really focused more on the fundraising side. They'll say, the product is doing well, we will push that product because it will be more profitable. Whereas Kickstarter will say, if a product's doing well, we'll not necessarily push it because we want our platform to be as attractive as possible and have that kind of arty feel, have that kind of unique, world first, sustainable and innovation kind of feel. Whereas Indiegogo will say, we want products that are going to be profitable. And so those are the two differences between the two platforms.
Interesting. I never ever, thought about it that way. Okay, those are crazy. Those are really, really nice tips, I have to say. This is a big question, and it's in regards to community. You talk about building community on platform. How do you transition community off platform from Kickstarter or Indiegogo? Do they give email addresses? Could you give incentives for creating a Facebook group? Obviously, they have internal communication and announcement boards for security reasons. Obviously, you've used their platform to get pledges, financial pledges from people, and so they want to actually keep the community on and keep communications on there so they could monitor it over a period of time. But how do you transition these people through to one-to-one communication, or do you fall back on that email list you built in pre-campaign?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I mean, that's something that is allowed on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. You're allowed to take your backers, take the details. Something like BackerKit, which is again a platform that is used generally to upsell to backers after a campaign, and to also collect the updated postal addresses, and also keep communications going with campaigners. That's kind of recommended. You can also just provide updates to just the backers, which you can then communicate with. But yeah, I mean, there is the ability to download those lists and to keep communications going. One thing that we kind of recommend after a campaign, and again, you can either go directly onto Indiegogo and run the whole campaign through Indiegogo, or you can do the Kickstarter and then do an Indiegogo in demand, which basically means that you can continue fundraising after the Kickstarter campaign is done, after the Indiegogo campaign is done. You can continue and have that interim phase where you continue pre-orders. It might be a little bit of a more expensive kind of phase because you want to put the product price at a little bit higher than you had at the campaign, just so you're not kind of annoying the backers that essentially got in at the earlier stage to get the best price. But you can still keep pre-orders going at a discounted rate, and you can keep that going for 6 months, 12 months, whatever you like. In the interim period where you're developing your prototype and pushing that into actually getting your first batch manufactured and logistically delivered, then you can have the in-demand running and keep the pre-orders coming in. And that's great because you get all that kind of off-run traffic, you get all the kind of excess that the campaign built that is still coming through to the in-demand. And from that, you can then build out your Shopify at some point and then do the whole transition to Shopify. And that's where everything is kind of like handed off, and you finish your crowdfunding kind of period, and that is everything done. Then you go onto Shopify and again continue pushing the product. You might have a manufacturing kind of a diary in mind where you kind of keep up with product demand, and then again you build in all these other elements that we talked about, which is the kind of retail and the Amazon and the FBA and all these other great things that come after that. But yeah, that's the kind of product life cycle for crowdfunding essentially.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. Klaviyo is a growth marketing platform that powers over 25,000 online businesses. Klaviyo understands every single customer interaction and empowers brands to create more personalized marketing moments. Listen, analyze, and act on your customer data with Klaviyo. Visit klaviyo.com/2x. From a marketing standpoint, what kind of budget should D2C businesses, established ones, and even potentially new ones who want to go to market through crowdfunding have, just as a ballpark figure, for a well executed crowdfunding campaign?
Yeah, so I guess this really comes down to the idea of cost per acquisition, cost per lead, cost per sale, which is all inbuilt into the advertising. And at the end of the day, the budget should really come down from the actual goal. So the campaign goal could either be to generate profit, it could be to generate sales, or it could, what most campaigns do is just to generate exposure. And so when you're looking at kind of corporate innovation campaigns, they could be spending, anywhere up to 100% of the budget on customer acquisition cost at 100% of the product price, but it doesn't really matter because they're getting exposure, they're getting testing, and so they could run advertising to 100,000 different clicks, and it could cost $100,000, but they're going to make $100,000 worth of sales. Whereas startups and smaller companies obviously want to focus on profit, or at least on exposure during the campaign, and so they look more at the actual ROI potential. So what we see with crowdfunding campaigns is to try and get like a kind of 5x ROI. So if you put in like $20,000, you can get a $100,000 campaign, and of course if you snowball and scale that up, you can have other different external factors to it. So you could say that PR will provide a certain amount of funding, the platform itself will provide a certain amount of funding, all these other elements such as the digital advertising, the kind of pre-campaign will result in different types of ROI, but generally like a 5 times is kind of what we kind of look to see from our clients. So yeah, I would say kind of 5 times that from your goal, and you'll probably see a kind of budget there.
Incredible. Michael, it's we could go on and on and on with this conversation, but I have to say it was, particularly insightful in the area of the pre-campaign setup. I learned also a bunch from from how to, just effectively get to the front page of Indiegogo and Kickstarter. For people who are listening till now, obviously, they're still engaged, and they probably want to hear more about what Blazon does and you. How can they reach out to you? Where you're most active on daytime? It'd be great to find out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you can go to blazonagency.com. You can reach us at hello@blazonagency.com. Also on Instagram @blazonagency, on Twitter @blazonagency, and myself @MICRV on Twitter. So, yeah, a bunch of different channels to reach us out to on. And yeah, definitely get in touch if you're looking to launch a product, if you're looking to launch a corporate innovation, if you're looking to launch D2C. Again, we're particularly interested in that European D2C market, the sustainability D2C market, bringing products that have not previously existed, that are kind of big hits in California, big hits in New York, but just don't really exist in Europe. I want to see a lot more products like that doing great things in Europe. I think the gap in the market is huge. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely a potential there. So if you know anyone in your network who wants to get involved, definitely get in touch. And of course, anything to do with crowdfunding in Europe, we're the experts, we're the number one. So get in touch in that regard as well, for sure.
An honor having you on here, and we hope to see a crowdfunding for not crowdfunding, actually pre-sale for CPG.
Absolutely.
Platform after this episode. So thank you so much, Michael.
Let's see it. Okay, thank you so much, Kunle. Great to meet you as well. Bye-bye.